Hey nerds! I was finally able to do the dungeon Ascalonian Catacombs, and it is my first dungeon in Guild Wars 2, and I have a lot to say about it and a lot of comparisons to make to the other two MMOs I've played, so this will be my first impression, Guild Wars 2 Dungeons. But before that, I'm actually really excited to say that this video is brought to you by quite a few things. First and foremost, my patrons, thank you so much. We're working on a Patreon page, which is why you haven't seen it at the end of the videos, but we will have it done soon. TM, but it'll be done. Also, to our amazing supporters, people who have applauded on my videos. If you haven't seen that button, looks like a heart with a $sign in the middle, and essentially it's like bits on Twitch. You click on it, you apply for a couple of bucks just to show that, hey, I may have YouTube Premium, but I want to help you. And all of the support is amazing because this is what I do full time. And lastly, if you guys didn't notice the new merch that I have here, Chalk and I have talked about creating our own org and game studio for a while, and we're finally doing it. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is finding creators who already have certain products that they would like published or just need a little bit of help with some of their streams, because not everyone knows that you can get sponsorships or promotions even if you don't have Twitch partners. So I really want to help everyone. I'm really excited. We're already growing strong, and we haven't even been a full organization for like 2 weeks that's been announced. So I'm really excited. So brought to you by Talent Song Gaming. If you're interested, maybe you're a creator yourself or you want to get into the biz, send me a message. I have my email attached on my About Me. You can also comment on this video and let me know, or join the Discord and let me know there that you want to be part of the org. And here we go. Guild Wars 2, First Impressions, my journey through MMOs concerning dungeons.
You're not the reinforcements I expected, but you'll do. That fool Norn heir has stirred up the ghosts down here. Let me brief you. This place has a history, and I don't want your ignorance getting us killed. This was originally Charland. The humans pushed us out and built Ascalon on top of it. Over 200 years ago, we took our land back. King Adalbert watched his soldiers panic as we breached the city gates. Facing certain defeat, the doomed king refused to surrender.
Retreat? Retreat is not an option!
Adalbert smashed his ancient blade Magder and cursed Ascalon.
You will not abandon me!
The blast incinerated the attacking legions and turned the defending humans into vengeful spirits.
We will never surrender! Never!
Ghosts see the living as invaders. They show no mercy and no weariness. Only blind hatred. Battle burns hatred. And now, heir's gone right into the dead king's lair. What a mess. We're going after her. She's causing trouble, and I don't want anyone dying because of her foolishness.
I'm going to start with only 2 qualms before we get into the rest of it. Qualm 1, that they stopped doing dungeons. And number 2 is that technically there's a story mode for the dungeon, and you get mail that kind of explains some of it and sends you there at level 30. And you could do it then and get the gist of what the story is supposed to be. However, if you wait until after the level 40 story quest, where you go back to Old Lion's Arch and you see everyone fighting, and then you see Heir stalk off with a plan, because that's how us Norns are, it makes so much more sense and it feels a lot more immersive. And so I think one of my qualms is that you get the letter, before that. I feel like you should receive the letter after even just that cinematic. I think it would flow more. I doubt they would make a change now, and probably not everyone is going to agree with me, but it just feels like it fits better there because you're like, okay, so Air is going there because she wants to get everyone to reconcile for everything that they're dealing with at hand and to fight the Elder Dragons, and it would kind of help reconcile with Ritlock and Logan. That's it. My only 2 qualms. Now to the positive stuff. Now for the positive stuff. Sure, people in chat said some of the bosses melt, but to me, it's neat that you actually have to break bars, stun them, that the mesmers can cast an orb around themselves to reflect projectiles, which was very irritating, that there are traps on the floor that not only the red AoEs show where they're going to be, but they stay there for a second. So if you're from 14 and you're thinking, oh hey, the red circle area that indicated the void zone went away, everything is safe, you're wrong. I died there once. The other thing that I really liked is that we had an NPC, Ritlock, who is absolutely awesome, come with us. He gave us a full cinematic version with dialogue of why we were there and why we were bringing Air back. And I think he cared a lot more than he let on about Air rather than just disturbing the ghosts there. I also like that you get a lot of backstory that as long as you're listening to the cinematic, you normally won't skip. You won't just run by. Another huge thing for me with experiencing my first Guild Wars 2 dungeon compared to anything else is it brings you back to those vanilla WoW days where you actually have to explore the area around the dungeon, get there, get the waypoint, almost like a, portal that you would have gotten in WoW for summoning, and you have to go in with your group of friends at the same time and start the instance. Now, there's 2 different ways that you can do it. To accomplish the dungeon your first time, you have to do the story mode, but after that you can do explorer mode, which is actually a bit harder. And what I like about it is that you can go in with 5 people, or you can go in with an undersized party, or even solo it at 80 if you would like. But just the idea that you actually have to get there, even though it's pointed out in the mail for you where it is on the map, you have to discover all of those places. You can't just teleport there. You don't queue into an instance with a bunch of people. You can't, click undersized party and just completely own it. It felt real and it felt immersive. I was also impressed that some rooms had secrets. So the very first room, essentially, that you're in that has ads holds a bunch of caskets, and you have to open up every single one of these caskets to find a magical key to the magical door. And sure, you could probably open up every single casket and try to down everything together in a bunch of AoEs and then unlock the door after Ritlock realizes that you found the key, but I doubt it would work. So we opened up all of the caskets eventually to find the key, and I actually went up to the door and tried opening it and made mention of this. And I just think that's really neat. Instead of doing a wall-to-wall pull through multiple rooms to get to the boss, there were actually little Easter eggs and secrets that you had to pick up to figure out how to get into the next room. Not only that, but I'd mentioned red AoEs for traps before. There were also booby traps in the forms of flames that came through the wall that could two-shot you. You also had spikes that came out of the ground. You also had different ads that you had to deal with in different ways, which is great that we had such a good comp to go in there. And for the bosses, to get them off of things, you actually had to throw boulders at them because they would knock you off of the platforms. It was a really neat experience actually having other things integrated into something rather than, like I said, wall-to-wall pulls and then just tank and spank bosses. I've also mentioned this in my previous video when I was starting to learn jumping puzzles, but ruts in the ground and portions of rock jutting out from the walls and roots and pretty much everything has to do with your footing, even in dungeons. So I actually had this point where I was trying to dodge back to evade out of red AoE for boss fights, and I hit this rut and I couldn't go anywhere, and it felt almost like a WoW blink malfunction, but it wasn't a bug. It's just the way it would be if you were actually in combat, and that was really impressive. the idea that all of these rooms were so intricate and detailed and took that into account rather than you, let's say, queuing for a raid, and in 14, even though I love 14, but every single room either being a platform or a big circle where it's, for the most part, completely flat, and then if you go off the sides or touch the sides, you die instantly. It just felt like you were actually in combat with rough terrain that you had to deal with, and some people might have been better at that terrain than others, and it was just really cool to actually have that to consider when you were trying to fight and have that change your gameplay a little bit. There were also cutscenes between rooms like checkpoints where you got a little bit more of the story. Now, my World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV viewers might not like that because a lot of times they speedrun things or farm certain things and want to have the best time and or just the best damage so that they can post logs. But for me, especially doing the dungeon for the first time, it was a neat experience because we found out that Air was there to grab the other blade that was actually King Ethelbert's, and there were twin blades, and Ritlock has one of them, and she wanted to give the other one to Logan Thackeray so that they both had twin blades to show that they were both just as important and they should set their differences aside, and that is just really cool. And the fact that she went in there alone was even better, and we didn't even necessarily save her, we just found her. I also love how not only was there background for the dungeon, but the dungeon kind of also gave background too. So without reading Ghosts of Ascalon, about the human and Char conflict and everything that went on there, and you find out why the ghosts are actually there. It was just because of this king's hatred. It just flowed through everyone, and they were protecting their land no matter what, and now they just resent the living. And so anyone that comes in, they think they have to destroy, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm actually really excited to read Ghosts of Ascalon. I'm really excited to do more dungeons, and I'm really excited to see where this story goes. It's incredible. The ghosts were incredible. The fights were fun. I want to actually go back in there on Explorer mode and do a bit more, because the whole time we were trying to do it for the first portion, Eddie was freaking out. But I'm really excited, and I can't wait to do Caudicus. I'll probably post a video on that too, but this was a lot of fun, and I actually think that for the population that Guild Wars 2 has and for the amount of hype that the community has, there needs to be more. And I really wish, after seeing this dungeon, that they did more dungeons, because this is incredible. I would honestly say that I could prefer these dungeons over any other dungeon I've done in an MMO so far. Granted, that's only compared to World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. It's just a lot more in-depth, for sure.
This sword would be for Logan.
What? Why would you risk our
Because you're in
lives,
love, that's
my
why.
life, for that coward?
Because you love
I
Logan.
thought it would heal old wounds.
And they're twin swords, so it would be like they're fighting together with the twin swords.
You've become a sentimental old woman.
That's really sweet,
We're
actually.
finished here.